America. Open House, Gary Shandling, and my close personal friend, Tracy Ullman, will not be seen tonight. Now stay tuned for a sneak preview of The Outsiders, a new series executive produced by Bart Simpson.
Bart!
Okay, a new series executive produced by Francis Ford Coppola. Satisfied, Homer?
Oh.
The story of The Outsiders. In 1983, Francis Ford Coppola directed a movie based on S.E. Hinton's beloved novel, The Outsiders, which starred many future Hollywood heavyweights, including Tom Cruise, Rob Lowe, Patrick Swayze, Matt Dillon, Emilio Estevez, and Ralph Macchio. What's often forgotten is that a few years later, Coppola helped to get a weekly TV show on the air at Fox. When the premiere aired in March 1990, it earned the highest rating ever for a drama episode on Fox. But ratings fell sharply, and Fox soon canceled the series. This is the story of the Forgotten Outsiders TV series. Well, greasers, the brothers often come into conflict with rich socias in town, kids who get all the breaks. Hinton wrote the novel while still in high school. In our school, I was in junior high at the time, these teenage gang books were all the rage. In addition to Hinton's Outsiders, That Was Then, This Is Now, and Rumblefish, there were several B-level books. The one I remember was Frank Bonham's Durango Street. Almost 16 years later, in March 1983, a movie based on the novel hit theaters. Directed by Francis Ford Coppola, it was a must-see for all teenagers from both sides of the tracks. I remember seeing it on opening night, and it seemed like half the rowdy crowd were people I knew. Gene Siskel gave it 3.5 stars, critical only of the ending, which he found too abrupt. On IMDb.com, it has a rating of 7.1, while it has 63% positive ratings on Rotten Tomatoes. The film had its broadcast television debut in July 1987 on CBS.
Nobody was surprised.
Fox finds a fit. On March 6, 1989, the San Francisco Chronicle reported that a sequel to The Outsiders was in the works. Coppola would co-executive produce a 2-hour made-for-TV movie to air on Fox. Hinton would write the script while Ellen Shapiro would direct. According to the Houston Chronicle, Fox was considering a weekly series, potentially to premiere in September 1989, when Fox expanded to Monday nights. Fox had launched its television network and become the 4th U.S. network, launching its first primetime schedule for the 1986-87 season. Fox only ran primetime programming for 2 hours on Saturday and 3 hours on Sunday. The other evenings were returned to the affiliates for local programming. Even their Saturday and Sunday schedules were an hour less than the major networks, which allowed the affiliates to, for the most part, run local nightly news. Fox programming was targeted to a younger demographic than the older networks, with shows like 21 Jump Street and The New Adventures of Bean Baxter.
Beans Baxter may look like your typical teenager, but this kid has one of the most dangerous after-school jobs going. I should know. I'm Baxter's boss. The government calls me number 2.
Reportedly, ABC, CBS, and NBC all turned down a TV series based on the novel and movie Outsiders. The movie's popularity on home video helped sell the concept, and Fox expressed interest. Fox expanded their schedule to include 2 hours on Monday nights for the 1989-90 television season. In early May, Fox was considering 13 pilots for use on Monday nights, including the television version of The Outsiders. Later that month, the network released its 89-90 schedule, and The Outsiders was not given a slot on Mondays. The Monday lineup consisted of moving 21 Jump Street to Mondays and adding new show Alien Nation. Outsiders would be held in reserve for use as a mid-season replacement. In early March, the network revealed it was making some spring changes to its 89-90 schedule. The Outsiders was given the Sunday 7 o'clock time slot. It would premiere with a special 90-minute episode on March 25th, airing from 9:30 to 11, and then moved to its regular time slot on April 1st. According to Peter Chernin, president of Fox Entertainment Group, The Outsiders would be distinctive emotional fun and an affirmation of family values. It captures the nostalgic value of what growing up was like in the 60s. This seems like a strange description to me, as Hinton's depiction of that age of adolescence was far grittier and less idealistic than the American dream. S.E. Hinton, Joe Byrne, and Joe Rosebrook developed the TV series. Hinton did not write the pilot episode. Instead, Ellen Shapiro penned the pilot script. Hinton, though, did serve as executive story consultant. Fox gave the series a 13-episode order. Can the new cast become the new Brat Pack? The producers of The Outsiders auditioned some 2,500 actors before settling on a group of relative unknowns, following much the same philosophy as they did for the movie. J.R. Ferguson won the lead role of Ponyboy Curtis. His only prior role was in the TV movie Shattered Dreams. While not a household name, Ferguson would find continual work in Hollywood. You might know him best as Stan Rizzo from Mad Men. Rodney Harvey and Boyd Kestner would play Ponyboy's older brothers, Soda Pop and Derry. Harvey would go on to act in My Own Private Idaho beside River Phoenix and Keanu Reeves. Like Phoenix, who died young at the age of 23, in 1993, Harvey would die at only 30 in 1998 of a drug overdose, a habit that he had developed during the filming of Idaho. Kestner has remained active as an actor and writer, continuing to work to this day. Their friends Steve Randall and Two-Bit Matthews would be played by Harold P. Pruitt and David Arquette. Tim Shepard, the roughest of the greasers, would be played by Robert Rusler. David Arquette, of course, made it big time, married Courtney Cox. This was David's first acting credit. Interestingly enough, David's sister Patricia also played in the show as Rhonda Sue. Of course, she would go on to a long career, including leading roles in Medium and CSI Cyber. Buck Merrill, the owner of the bar and service station where Soda Pop worked, would be played by Billy Bob Thornton. Now, doesn't Billy Bob seem like he would fit right into Tulsa and The Outsiders? Thornton was a bit older already. He was around 35, but had only been getting acting credits for about 4 years. Prior to that, he had a failed career as a baseball player and then worked laying asphalt. Rounding out the main cast were Kim Walker as Cherry Valance, a Soch who went to high school with Ponyboy and was friendly with him. Kim Walker had played one of the Heathers in the movie Heathers. She would also pass away young at age 32 in 2001 of a brain tumor. Julie Warner, Stephen Dorff, and Michael Madsen also appeared in one episode each. Critically reviewed. Some saw The Outsiders as a perfect fit for Fox. Ed Siegel of the Boston Globe felt The Outsiders was right at home on Fox, suggesting the network was the first that seeks thematic unity from program to program, each of which could probably be called The Outsiders. Individual greaser types, those on The Outsiders, Johnny Depp, 121 Jump Street, and Richard Grieco and Booker, don't have to be as emblematic of mainstream values as most of their network cousins. More than anything else, John J. O'Connor wrote in a review for the New York Times, "This is a class war. And after a decade of the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer, Fox's exploration of the traditional divisions adds up to the shrewd audience targeting. High ratings have a short half-life." The special 90-minute premiere of The Outsiders on March 25th averaged an 11.1 rating and an 18 share in the preliminary overnight Nielsen ratings. That made it the highest-rated dramatic show in the history of the Fox network. Nationally, the debut averaged a 9.3 16 share, 14.1 million viewers tuned in. It ranked 4th in its time slot and tied for 64th for the week out of 81 shows. It lost exactly half the viewers who watched Married with Children from 9 to 9:30. The following week, in its regular 7 to 8 p.m. time slot, opposite 60 Minutes on CBS, and without the benefit of strong lead-ins, The Outsiders would only manage a 5.0 and 10 share, Nielsen rating, and 7.5 million viewers. The episode ranked 81st for the week out of 85 shows. The only shows that did worse were Booker, Alien Nation, and The Reporters, all also on Fox. The third episode sank even lower, averaging a 4.7 rating and 8 share and ranking 83rd, ahead of only The Tracy Ullman Show. The fourth episode actually ranked dead last for the week with a 4.3 and 9 rating. The series remained in the bottom 5 for its entire run. The story of the Greasers and the Socs continues. Ponyboy narrated every episode of The Outsiders. The episode itself started with footage from the 1983 film depicting the death of Dallas Winston. After the opening credits, the characters were shown attending his funeral. The premiere introduced several recurring themes. Perhaps the most important was the very real possibility that Ponyboy and Soda Pop would be removed from Derry's custody if they got into trouble or if the Department of Welfare decided their home environment was unsuitable. Introduced in the premiere was Belinda Jenkins, a girl Ponyboy met at school who had a big chip on her shoulder. He gave her the nickname Scout, and the two became friends.
Sad book.
Yeah, real sad.
No time for sergeants?
Okay, so it ain't a sad book. My parents are fighting again.
The premiere also saw Tim Shepard, a minor character from the novel, return to town. Derry didn't want him around because he worried Tim would raise flags for the Department of Welfare. Tim soon found himself arrested and thrown in jail after a rumble, which Derry had forbidden Ponyboy and Soda Pop from joining. Derry and Tim patched things up, and Tim got a job at a power plant to avoid going back to jail. In a later episode, union workers at that plant went on strike, and Tim joined them. Derry, desperate for a job, crossed the picket line to work as a scab, infuriating Tim and Soda Pop.
I swear to God, I'll kill him! Do it, man!
The series also dealt with Ponyboy being in high school. He was a good writer, and his English teacher encouraged him. He was once forced to tutor a Soc on the track team. There were dances and fights and trying to find time to study. Above all, there was the fact that Ponyboy was a greaser. Nevertheless, he maintained friendships with Cherry and Randy, despite the fact that most of Cherry's friends and family didn't want her anywhere near greasers. Making things worse, Cherry developed an attraction to Tim.
By looking for his property. I was getting to where I could see the truth. Someday I'll be brave enough to speak it.
Each episode included multiple plots, some of which intersected. Stories involved Ponyboy losing his virginity to an older woman, Ponyboy and Derry fighting about whether or not to help a convict who had escaped from a chain gang, Soda Pop thinking he'd gotten his girlfriend pregnant, Two-Bit dealing with his father issues after a baby girl is abandoned, a carnival coming to town, preparing for a tornado strike, Scout running away from home, and Derry in a boxing match. The replacements. So one thing I didn't like about the Outsiders TV show was how they used new characters to replace ones that had died in the movie and the end of the book. Particularly, the increased role of Tim Shepard was basically to replace the role of Dallas Winston, which was sort of the outsider of the Outsiders, the one that brought the younger Curtis boys into danger, the one that was looked up to by many of them, but not a good influence, and definitely in direct conflict with Derry, who is the responsible one. The other character, of course, that had died was Johnny, and the show's use of Scout seemed to be a bit of a replacement, although obviously female. There was no real romantic relationship between Scout and Ponyboy. They were friends. And that soft side of Scout, liking to read, for example, was to replace Johnny, even down to coming from an abusive household. The Curtis family kind of latched on to Scout and brought her in almost like a little sister. The characters were good, but it was just a little bit weird how it was both characters were brought in and it kind of just backtracked the storyline almost as if the other two characters hadn't passed away. They were just replaced.
His teachers thought he was just plain dumb. But he wasn't. Johnny was my best friend.
What happened to him?
He died. In a fire. I got out in time. But he didn't. So dawn goes down today. Nothing gold can stay.
I never knew anybody else liked to watch sunsets.
Fox cancels The Outsiders. As a mid-season replacement, all 13 episodes of The Outsiders were finished filming months before the series debuted. That forced the cast to wait and hope that Fox would renew the series for the 1991 season. The solid ratings for the premiere episode were a positive sign. Ratings for the episodes that followed were not. Fox preempted the series on May 20th and aired a repeat on May 27th. A few days later, the network announced in its 1991 schedule The Outsiders was being cancelled. Other cancelled shows included 21 Jump Street, which moved to syndication, Alien Nation, Booker, and The Tracy Ullman Show. New shows introduced went after the same demographic, including Beverly Hills 90210, which was a successful addition, and Parker Lewis Can't Lose, which was a Ferris Bueller's Days ripoff, which managed to last 3 seasons. While NBC's official spin-off of Ferris Bueller the same year lasted only 13 episodes. Fox's similar programming trends then continued the next year in 1991-92 when they tried out Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventures, which only lasted 1 year. At the time of cancellation, only 8 episodes of The Outsiders had aired. Fox broadcast another 3 episodes during June. The last 2 aired in July, with the 13th and final episode broadcast on July 22nd. Repeats continued through the end of August. A total of 9 episodes were repeated. The Outsiders has never aired in syndication. TV Land aired at least 1 episode in the early 2000s. It has never been released commercially on any format. It is available on YouTube. People have posted it, and I will include links below where you can see the episodes. So what was the lasting legacy of The Outsiders, the TV show? Not much, to be honest. Francis Ford Coppola, of course, would go on to a legendary career. He'd already done the Godfather saga. He had also already directed another S.E. Hinton offering, Rumblefish, in between the movie and the TV versions of The Outsiders. Hinton would see her first 4 books brought to the big screen: The Outsiders, That Was Then, This Is Now, Rumblefish, and Tex. She released a 5th book, Taming the Star Runner, in 1988. She made a comeback in 2004 with Hawks Harbor, which was targeted to adults this time. It was a story of vampires. In 2007, she released Some of Tim's Stories, a collection of short stories. But no, not about Tim Shepard. TV continues to be filled with teen shows, but most of them concern the rich and privileged, or they contrast the rich kids with the poorer kids. Unfortunately, very few of them speak with the true voice that Hinton spoke to a generation. Perhaps the closest comparison would be the great John Hughes, who produced 80s teen movies that spoke to a generation but were from a man who seemed to understand the universal issues facing adolescents, regardless of the decade. But perhaps the greatest legacy is when visiting my own nephew a couple years ago, I picked up his school copy of The Outsiders from the coffee table, realizing that at least some teens are still immersing themselves in S.E. Hinton's world. Thanks for watching.
When I stepped out into the bright sunlight,
Even if you only have them for a short time, you can always remember.
It's gone.
But we had it while it was here.